I'm Heinbach and it's good to have you back. The song you're hearing was made entirely using this synthesizer. This is the Swenigiser by Analog Sweden. This is a reverse engineered and expanded upon copy of a legendary but very rare instrument, the Organ Systems Energizer, made by Geoff Waterston in 1996. The Energizer wasn't a big hit, and there are numbers floating around that go from anywhere to 50 to 150 units being made. But over time it got a cult following because it has a very special sound, not at least due to its filter, which has 15 different modes. This caused prices to go into collector's territory, and not one but two companies took it upon them to copy this instrument in 2021. Silver Machines, Analog Sweden, and even Geoff Waterston is making the Energizer again. So these days it's probably easier than when this came out to get the special sound of this instrument. Analog Sweden gave me this unit to demo on video, and I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I made 3 tracks using only the Swenigiser, and I'm going to show you how I made them, so we can talk a bit about music and how this instrument influenced the music that I made. Let's go into the first track. As this was the very first piece I made with the Swenigiser, I was still exploring things, but I knew I wanted to do one thing: create a driving line first, something a bit acidy, something that could carry the track. And that is this one. There's only an EQ on here, as most of the effects come from the Chroma console by Hologram Electronics. I used the pitch shift a bit to do some glitter up top, and I used the tape EQ simulation. Both of them sound rather good. The Swenigiser, I used the saw wave and paired that with a phase filter, because I love phase filters. They're my favorite thing about the Oberheim expander behind me. And that was already the main line. I then wanted a harmony, and that's this. Here again I used the saw wave, and I recorded this part 2 times, just very slightly detuned to each other, and that gives something that this instrument lacks, because this has just one oscillator. So if you record it 2 times, detune it slightly, you get that lovely effect that is so common on vintage synthesizers with 2 oscillators, or even modern ones, where the 2 oscillators beat against each other just ever so slightly. And of course, on both, I modulated the filter a lot for these wide sweeps. I added a bass. That's the simple pulse waveform on this, paired with a slide. And I overdrove it a bit using the filter drive, and I added a bit of the sub oscillator. Even though it's in a pretty high register for bass, it's still rather deep, and I tried to play it in a way that's very natural. I didn't want to program this. I love playing things by hand. I think it adds just something beautiful. And this goes out through the whole track. On the bass I have very few effects, just an EQ and my plugin dials. I made with Audio Thing, and it just adds a little bit of compression and some drive. And I set the oversample to pretty high. I think that's 4x. Oh, that's good. And that just makes it so much more thick and controlled. It's a cheat code for me to use this on bass. Mainline, bass, harmony, and now a 4th harmony. And I wanted something more sparkly with a different texture. I kept the same settings on the Chroma console adding only a bit of the cassette lo-fi, and that resulted in this. There's a bit of dirt on there. Got a little bit too hot, but yeah, in the mix, it doesn't matter. It just adds a nice sparkle up top. Those are almost all the main ingredients, except there's a B part. Because if you don't have a B part in a song, I feel it can be a bit lacking. Sometimes it's cool to just write on one pattern and bring things in and out. But if I'm honest, I really like a B part that goes to a different harmony. So the bass changes its pattern, goes very low. Oh, it's just lovely how that modulates. I was twisting the filter on that one too, just a little bit. And then I've got a sound I called Arcade, which is a pattern I made with the arpeggiator on the beat step. It reminds me of an arcade machine. It's very happy, it's very jump and run. And I used the reverse setting on the diffusion of the chroma console. So you get a little bit of reverse reverb. And I used this not only in the B part, this transitions to the main part. And that was the first track I made with the Swenigiser. All the sounds are from it, and I was happy that it was able to do all these different things, to do all these different tasks. Let's listen to the second piece. Beautiful strings are again the saw filter through one of the phase filters, and I tracked each of them separately, which was a bit tedious, but it sounds good. But I found a solution for that in the third track, and we'll get to that in a bit. Voice 1, 2, 3. The strings here are the storytellers. They lend weight to the very crunchy line that this track actually started out with. That's a bit Knight Rider-ish, and I really wanted something that sounds dirty and rough. So again, color console with some overdrive there and lo-fi filtering. And in mixing, I added dials again to crush it up a slightly more, add a bit more drive, and filter out all the low end. To make it sit in a very specific place in the mix. I actually wanted to make a bass that was dun 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 pulsing, but I realized this doesn't work because there's so much movement in that line, which I made using the pulse. I do random slides there by routing the LFO, the rectangle shape, to the slide switch. That creates all kinds of slides that are not quite in time, but they work. But it makes it harder to sync stuff, so I needed a solid foundation, and I decided, no, the bass has to be just one thing. Lots of the sub bass added, and I did a bunch of filter sweeping throughout the whole of this take. But the moving line combined with the solid bass work well together. Because I overdid it a bit also with the echo, so the sound of the main line is a bit washy. But the bass then adds definition. It's a problem when printing effects that sometimes you wish you wouldn't have done it, but then there's another solution. You can try and find out what it is. The string harmony evolves over 32 bars, so I did not feel the need for a B part, as the final part of that ending has already that kind of feeling to me. But I wanted some change, so I added another little arcade style thing here, a pulse. I programmed this using the Ableton Live arpeggiator and then used the cassette dropout on the color console for more modulation. And these are all the parts of this piece, except for the reverb, which is the glorious Great British Spring, which I use all the time. I always print this external reverb with my tracks, because you don't know what might happen to this at some point in the future. It's good to have it printed. The process of tracking individual synthesizer parts to create one big string patch might be lovely, and it allows some things like polyphonic slide, simulated polyphonic slide, because it's monophonic that you combine into one big instrument. But it's also slightly tedious. So for the next track, I decided to try something different. I made a decent sampler instrument out of that string patch, so I can play it polyphonically. And instead of showing you the full song, I'm gonna show you now how I built that song, and then we're gonna listen to it. I started the track with this little part. I added a harmony. And that sounds very classical, so I decided I'm gonna chop this up. I'm using a trance gate. And that was the beginning of the feeling of this track. A decent sampler instrument is available for my patrons, and Patreon is the way I can make these videos, so thank you very much for your support there. This part had a very regal feeling to me, so I wanted to try something clean this time as the main line. And I came up with this. Turning off the effect, I'm using Valhalla Übermod. Turn that off. I played that by hand and it felt like playing a weird organ melody, but I really like the clean sound of this compared to the more dirty stuff I did before, and it has a very psychedelic feel. And yeah, it's kind of trance without all the drums. I added a bass to that. And that feels very nice because the bass has a bit of punch, so it does feel a bit like a kind of 808-ish drum thing without being too obnoxious. And the solid pulse wave that this synthesizer can put out really helped in that. It's clean, it sits right in the spot where it needs to be, and there's no flab. Again, I think I use dials on it. Of course. Dials is again on the bass. It really helps. And all three together sound like this. And next I added screamies, something that's a bit voice-like, but instrument-like, that can be in the background, but just adds emotion and excitement and marks transitions, for example. Slightly detuned here. All these up top, again doubled, slightly detuned, panned left and right. And those are important for me to make a track speak and tell the story. Because you've got a pattern that drives through it and another pattern. Something needs to be there and say, hey, this is the context and this is the story. You know, we're driving, we're driving, we're driving. These are things that are passing you by while you look out the window on your trip. So I added these. But then I was lacking something. I'd made myself the rule to use only the Swenigiser for these tracks. But what good are artistic rules if you can't break them when there is a reason that is strong enough? It's good to set these rules in place to inspire you and give you a frame set. But once you explored that frame set, it's time to break out of it. I needed another storytelling device like the screamies. And I played a bit of Rhodes, and that Rhodes sounds like this. That is run through a Dynacord tape echo. And I added a second Rhodes that plays together with the sequence. It's just nice sparkles and a little bit of da-dum to give the electronic sounds a bit more realness. And I like the combination of these two things. And those are all the things in this piece. Let's listen to it. Since I don't have the original or the reissue or the Silver Machines version here, I can't say how this compares. It just sounds very good, and all the additions make it very useful. This has MIDI, which the original didn't have. It has gate boosters, so you can more easily trigger the envelopes externally, as well as all this buffered modular inputs and outputs, which is very handy. I didn't get to explore that in this video. It is a nice take on a synthesizer that maybe undeservedly so was underappreciated when it came out. Born out of a DIY community spirit. Sadly, they're not selling kits anymore. As far as I know, there will only be finished versions of this available. You will find the 3 tracks on my Patreon, and your support is what makes these videos possible. Thank you for that. If you have any more questions, do put them in the comments below or visit the subreddit. Thank you all for watching. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye.